highs and lows on her blog called Either Fields. This is where she expressed disappointment in herself for relapsing into her illness. She, in fact, abandoned this blog in favor of a Tumblr account called Nouvelle/Nouveau, where she continued to write about her struggle with bouts of mania and depression. Elisa was the daughter of immigrants from Hong Kong who opened a restaurant in Burnaby, just outside Vancouver, Canada. She was a student at the University of British Columbia, although she was not registered there at the beginning of 2013. As I said, she had been diagnosed with bipolar disorder and depression. She had been prescribed 4 different medications: Wellbutrin, Lamicidal, Seroquel, and Effexor. According to her family, who supposedly kept the history of mental illness a secret, she had no history of ideals of suicidal ideations or attempts. Although one report did claim that she had previously gone missing for just a brief period. This brings us to January 13th, 2013. Elisa posted she had booked her flight to explore San Diego, Los Angeles, Santa Cruz, and San Francisco on what she called her West Coast tour. For her trip to California, Elisa traveled alone on the Amtrak train and on city buses. She visited the San Diego Zoo and posted photos that she had taken there on her social media. One of the things that she was so proud of is that she was able to eat $3 meals. On January 26th, she arrived in LA, and after 2 days, she checked into the Cecil Hotel. The Cecil Hotel, now known as the Stay on Main, is a historic hotel located at 640 South Main Street in LA. Even before this case about Elisa Lam, this hotel had a morbid, dark history. The Cecil was a grand hotel when it opened in 1927, but the Great Depression hit Los Angeles hard and the hotel fell quickly into a decline. As decades passed, thousands of homeless people began moving into the area, which is now known as Skid Row. The hotel could not command high rates due to its location, which attracted guests who needed the cheapest places to stay. Often, these people were at extremely low points in their lives. During the 1960s, the locals called it the suicide, as the hotel had been seen, and it had seen at least 6 suicides and several murders, including the murder of an infant. Now, why would Elisa choose a hotel with such a poor location and an evil past? It's quite likely she didn't know. She hoped to take a side trip to a different place, and she was trying to stretch her traveling money just as far as it would go. And, like I said, in San Diego, she bragged about eating $3 meals after all. She was initially assigned a shared room on the hotel's 5th floor, which I find really weird. I didn't even know they did that in hotels. Share a room with strangers. However, her roommates complained to the hotel manager that she had some odd behaviors, and they moved her into a room of her own after just 2 days. Elisa's family had been pretty wary of her traveling by herself, but she was determined to go at it alone, and I totally understand. I would completely do that. As a compromise, Elisa agreed to check in with her parents every single day of her trip to let them know that she was safe. I still don't think my mom would go for it. That's why it struck her parents as really unusual when they didn't hear from her last people to see Elisa alive. Maybe the last. She remembered Elisa buying books and music for her family back in Vancouver. She said that it seemed like she had plans to return home, plans to give these things to her family members and to reconnect with them. She described Elisa as outgoing, very lively, and very friendly. She was talking about the book she was getting and whether or not it would be too heavy for her to carry around as she traveled. On February 15th, after another week with no sign of Elisa, the LAPD released a video of the last known sighting of her, taken in one of the Cecil's elevators by a video surveillance camera on February 1st. And this is where things start to get really bizarre. In this clip, the camera of one of the elevators, it's in the rear corner and it looks down from the ceiling. It offers a view of not just the interior of the elevator, but the hallway outside as well. This video is somewhat grainy and the timestamp at the bottom is obscured. At some point, even Elisa is pixelated. At the start, she enters. She's wearing a red zippered hoodie over a gray t-shirt with black shorts and sandals. She enters from the left and she goes to the control panel. She appears to select several floors and then steps back into the corner. After a few seconds, during which the elevator door fails to close, she steps up to it, leans forward so her head is through the door. She looks both directions, quickly steps back into the elevator, walking back to the wall and into the corner near the control panel. The elevator doors remain open. After a few seconds, she goes back to it again and stands in the doorway, leaning on the side. Suddenly, she steps out into the hall and then to the side. She walks back in, looks to the side, and then goes back out. She steps sideways again, and for a few seconds she's mostly invisible behind the wall. She has her back to the wall, but you can't see her because she's out of the camera view. The elevator door remains open. Elisa's right arm can be seen going up to grab her head. She then turns to re-enter the elevator, putting both hands on the side of the door. She goes back to the control panel, presses many more buttons, some of them more than once, then returns to the wall that she had come into the elevator from, putting both hands over her ears briefly as she walks back to the section of the wall she had been standing against before. Again, the elevator doors remain open. She turns to her right and starts rubbing her forearms together, and then waves her hands out to her sides, palms flat, fingers outstretched, while bowing forward slightly and rocking gently. This can all be seen through the door, which remains open. After she backs into the wall again and walks away to the left, the elevator door finally closes. No one else was captured on this video. I will try and remember to link it down below if you haven't seen it, but it is very, very odd. The public's reaction to this video crossed all the way from Canada and China, where Elisa's family is originally from. The 4-minute video of her strange behavior has amassed tens of millions of views. Several theories have evolved to explain her actions. One was that she was trying to get the car to move in order to escape someone who was pursuing her. Others suggested that she might be under the influence of ecstasy or some other party drug, but none was detected when they found her. When her bipolar disorder became known, the February 19th, Elisa's body was found in one of the 4 1,000-gallon tanks, providing water to hotel rooms, a kitchen, and a coffee shop. According to a statement by the chief of the LA Fire Department, the tank in which Elisa's body was found had to be drained completely and then cut open from the side in order to get her out of there. Nobody knows how Elisa got in this tank. She didn't have any clothes on. They were floating next to her. The same clothes she wore in that very creepy surveillance video. It was also noted that her watch and room key were found with her. They sent Elisa for an autopsy, and when the results came out, it really only ignited more questions. The toxicology report confirmed she had consumed a number of medical drugs, likely to be the medications for her bipolar disorder, but no alcohol or illegal substances were in her body. No evidence of physical trauma, sexual assault, or suicide. Soon after the toxicology report was released, amateur sleuths began poring over any information they could find in hopes of solving the mystery behind the death of Elisa Lam. For example, one summary of Elisa's toxicology was posted online by a Reddit sleuth, someone with an obvious interest in medicine. Their breakdown pointed to 3 key observations. Elisa took at least one antidepressant that day. She had taken her second antidepressant and mood stabilizer recently, but not that day. And she had not taken her antipsychotic recently. These conclusions suggested that Elisa may not have been taking her medication properly. It is an important finding to note that given the use of antidepressants to treat bipolar disorder can risk inducing manic side effects if this is done without caution. Some sleuths have understandably latched onto this detail and suggest that this was the likely explanation behind Elisa's strange behavior in the video. Hotel manager Aimee said some statements in court that strongly support this theory. During Elisa's stay at the Cecil, Price said that Elisa was originally booked into the shared room, but the odd behavior had her moved. But even if Elisa had been suffering from mental health issues, how did she end up dead? And even more so, how did she end up in the hotel's water tank? They were unable to do a full examination of her body because they could not examine the blood from her decomposing body. I found that strange because if they weren't able to do all of the blood tests they needed to do, how did they get the fact that she had taken her medications? But I found that fact on several sites. Her parents, David and Yenna Lam, filed a wrongful death suit against the Cecil several months after Elisa's death was uncovered. Their attorney stated that the hotel had a duty to inspect and seek out hazards that presented an unreasonable risk of danger to Elisa and other hotel guests. The hotel, of course, fought back against this suit and filed a motion to dismiss it. The lawyer argued that the hotel had no reason to think that someone would be able to get into one of those water tanks. Based on court statements from the hotel's maintenance staff, this argument is not entirely far-fetched. Santiago Lopez was the first to find Elisa's body, describing in detail how much effort he had to exert just to find her. He said that he took the elevator to the 15th floor of the hotel, walked up the staircase onto the roof. Then he had to turn off the rooftop alarm, climb up on the platform where the 4 water tanks were located, and finally had to climb another ladder to get to the top of the tank. Only gas from the top of the tank. His testimony suggested that it would have been very difficult for Elisa to make it to the top of the water tank on her own, at least without anyone noticing. The hotel's chief engineer, Pedro Tovar, also made it clear that it would be very difficult for anyone to access the rooftop where the water tanks were located without triggering the alarms. Only hotel employees would be able to deactivate the alarm properly. If the alarm was triggered, the sound would reach all the way to the front desk, as well as the entire top 2 floors of the hotel. Los Angeles Superior Court Judge Howard Helm ruled the death of Elisa Lam was unforeseeable. It had happened in an area where guests were not allowed to access, so the lawsuit was dismissed. Elisa Lam's mysterious demise was not the first to happen at the Cecil. I was surprised to learn about some of these. In fact, this building's sordid past has earned it a reputation as one of the most supposedly haunted properties in LA. I'm still not staying there. Since opening its doors in 1927, the Cecil has been plagued by 16 different non-natural deaths and unexplained paranormal events. The most famous death associated with the hotel, other than Elisa Lam's, was the 1947 murder of actress Elizabeth Short, or as you may know her, the Black Dahlia. She was reportedly seen drinking in the hotel bar just days before her grisly demise. The hotel has also hosted some of the country's most notorious killers. In 1985, Richard Ramirez, also known as the Night Stalker, lived on the top floor of the Cecil during his monstrous killing spree. The story goes that after a murder, Mr. Ramirez would dump his bloody clothes outside the hotel and return half-dressed. Back then, the hotel was in such disarray that Ramirez's stunts hardly raised an eyebrow. 6 years later, another murderous patron moved into the hotel. Austrian serial killer Jack Unterweger, who earned the nickname the Vienna Strangler. With such a macabre history, one would think that the Cecil would soon be condemned. But actually, the old building was recently granted landmark status by the LA City Council. The hotel was given the distinction because of the building's opening back in the 1920s, which is considered the beginning of the lodging industry in the United States. While an answer to the mystery behind the death of Elisa Lam remains unclear, the obsession surrounding that mystery has remained in the public consciousness ever since. I think that it's pretty impossible to know what was happening inside Elisa's mind. I just know that her life ended before it really began. She wasn't very old. Her family will never again get to enjoy her quick wit or her bright smile. And while to the internet world, Elisa may be remembered as a peculiar death that made a really scary story, for her friends and family, she was extremely loved, and she will be forever missed. So, my theory on this case is that someone from the hotel had to do something to her. I base that off of the fact that the alarm had to be undone by someone from the hotel. Now, I don't know if she was deceased before she got in that water tank. I think that is a lot of ladders for someone to carry a body up. Now, she wasn't very big, and realistically, a larger man, could have firemen carried her up there. She wasn't assaulted, but she didn't have any clothes on. The lid was open. So I don't know. She was only 12 inches from the top. So that also makes me think, well, maybe she wasn't awake when she was put in there. I could see if she had drowned, if the lid was shut and she wasn't able to move it. But I don't think that's what happened, at least not according to the man that found her. According to him, the tank was open and he looked in and saw her there, so he didn't really have to do a lot of investigating to find her. I don't know what happened. I don't have an explanation for the very, very strange and quite creepy to me elevator video. I don't think that this was some kind of manic episode. Yeah, she was alone. She wasn't traveling with anyone. She didn't know anyone there. So yeah, she was traveling alone. But I don't have a tendency to blame it on whatever disorder she may or may not have had. I don't think that that is the cause of this. But I do think that someone else was involved. I do think that someone knows something. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed this video.